Welcome to Recliner Sports. 24th of September, Canadiens in a preseason matchup against the New Jersey Devils. Neither team really showed up with their strongest players. New Jersey in particular didn't really have a very strong team. Montreal with a 3-0 victory. 2 goals from Michael Pezzetta and a goal from Nick Suzuki. Like I said, the Devils didn't really show up with that great a team. This performance is a little bit in contrast to yesterday's game against the Flyers, the Philadelphia Flyers. The Canadiens obviously going up against weaker competition again for the second night in a row. They come up with a shutout again. However, I don't think that there is nearly as much to be happy about in tonight's game than there was about last night's game. The team did not play nearly as well. There's not as many bright spots and maybe a few more dark spots to talk about. The Canadiens won 3-0. First goal, Michael Pezzetta scores on a nice passing play from Xavier Simoneau and William Trudeau. That was in the second period, early on in the second period. The second goal came late in the third period, a goal, Suzuki from Trudeau again. Again, a bit of a turnover, bit of a scrambly play in the New Jersey Devils' end. The Devils tried to clear the puck. They weren't able to. Trudeau retrieved the puck at the blue line. Suzuki was still in front of the net. He hadn't vacated the premises yet. And Trudeau fired a shot pass sort of thing to Suzuki. Suzuki deflected it past Nico Dawes and nets for Florida. And then you have Pezzetta on an empty net from Owen Beck. So I got 3 takeaways again from today's game. The obvious one is that this just wasn't a very good game. I think combined the two teams were 0 for 14 on the power play, including the Canadiens, who I think went 0 for 8. The power play did not look good at all. Despite the fact that Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky were on the bench, they did play. They did get opportunities on the power play, including on a 5-on-3, a full 2-minute 5-on-3. So they just did not look that good. They weren't able to finish. They got a couple of chances, but not very many. So that was kind of unfortunate. They didn't look great there. The veteran players overall didn't look that great tonight to me. Slafkovsky was okay. Caulfield was okay. Suzuki, for him, was not very good. I mean, it's very rare that you can say anything negative about Suzuki after a hockey game. Tonight, I didn't think he had his best game. What else? The young players played all right. Mijar, who I want to talk about, and Farrell played an okay game, but not very good, which I don't think is good enough for them. Unfortunately, I think the time is starting to run out on those guys as far as them having a chance to be long-term contributors to this team, which brings me to my 3 takeaways from this game. My first one, like I said, Mijar and Farrell. Farrell, I might give a little bit more of a break to because he has been injured. However, I think that both of these guys are really nearing the end of their road as far as them having a chance at being any real long-term contributors to the Montreal Canadiens. They're both offensive players. They're both smaller players. They don't bring a lot of defense. They don't bring a lot of physicality. To me, if either one of them or both of them are going to make the Montreal Canadiens, it's going to be in a point production role. It's most likely going to be a top 6 role. They're not guys who are going to be able to make this team as a 3rd or 4th liner. And frankly, the competition is getting pretty tight for the top 6. These guys haven't shown enough to me. I think that they need to show a lot more. Mijar, like I said, played okay tonight, had a couple chances, but didn't really show a whole lot. And certainly not enough for the Montreal Canadiens brass to start considering him as being, somebody who might be a part of this team. Those are 2 guys who may have a chance to play in the NHL someday. But again, they may also be looking at playing in Europe or something like that, given their size and so on and so forth. My next thing I want to talk about are Beck and Reinbacher. I think both had good games tonight. Beck played well, Reinbacher played well. But what I want to talk about with those two guys is that I think these guys are going to be just as important to the future of the Montreal Canadiens as some of the more high profile prospects that the Canadiens have. Guys like Demidov, guys like Hudson. These are guys who have the abilities and the skills to fill very important roles on a Stanley Cup contending team. Right? We always look at a guy like Demidov and we see how flashy he is, and we all fall in love with production. We fall in love with goals and assists and all of that. But having a guy like Owen Beck who can play, third or fourth line, he has offensive upside. He is a good defender. He's a great face-off guy. He's got grit. He's got physicality. He brings everything you would want in a third-line center. And honestly, I don't think there are very many teams in the NHL who wouldn't really love to know that their third-line center position is locked up for, 8, 10, 12 years down the road, right? I think that Owen Beck does that for you, and I think that having, a third line centerman locked up maybe is not as important as having a first line centerman locked up, but it's pretty close, right? And knowing that you have that guy and he's in your system and that he's, continuing to improve, and every time you see him, much like Lane Hudson, right? Every time he gets an opportunity to prove himself, he does so. He goes above and beyond expectations, and I think Owen Beck is going to be an important member of this team going forward in a lot of ways, not just on the ice, but off the ice, leadership roles, things like that. Same with Reinbacher, right? Reinbacher's not flashy. He's not Lane Hudson. He's not going to go out there and do a bunch of dipsy doodles and put up a ton of points and whatever, but he is a solid defenseman. And tonight was a prime example of that. He might not have been that noticeable. He certainly wouldn't have been as noticeable as Hudson was last night. However, he made his plays. He got the puck out of his own end. He was able to make that first pass. He was strong on the boards. He's physical when he needs to be. He sees the ice really, really well. Makes crisp, clean passes on the tape. And I think that's a guy that any team would want to have. And again, he's not the kind of guy who jumps out at you. Like if you're watching the game and you're not really paying attention, you might not notice a ton about him. But certainly, I think he was noticeable to me, and I think having that solid defensive defenseman on your team is a role that you want to have. And if you can have a guy like that, again, like Beck for the next 6, 8, 10 years, that's ideal. Like not everybody can be a Lane Hudson, and you can't have you can't have 6 Lane Hudsons or Mike Mathesons on your team. You need to have those guys who can be those solid, big defensemen who can move the puck well, can skate, all of that stuff. So that's my thoughts about Beck and Reinbacher and why I think they're just as important as some of the more high-profile prospects that the Canadiens have. Because I think you do need to fill those roles, and those roles are just as important as the scoring. We always talk about depth players when we talk about Stanley Cup contending teams. When we talk about teams that are going to go all the way, teams that have a chance to win the cup, we look at Toronto. We look at, they've got great high-end scoring. They've got great, top-end guys, but what are they going to do with their third and fourth line? Who is going to fill those roles that, will make the difference in a Stanley Cup playoff series? We see that time in, even Edmonton last year, as they were leading up to the playoffs, they weren't adding scorers to their team. They were adding, depth guys. They were adding depth forwards, Corey Perry, guys like that. And those are the guys who oftentimes are important. When you can get those guys at a young age and you can establish them in those roles, I think it's a great opportunity for a rebuilding team. Finally, the third thing is the Canadiens power play. Obviously, we're in the preseason. Obviously, it's probably not something they're working on a ton in the training camp. But again, tonight it was abysmal again, 0 for 8. Not a lot of shots on goals, not a lot of chances either. They just need more work. And, we understand now that, that St. Louis is working with the power play directly, or will be this year once The team is established, so hopefully that'll make a bit of a difference. But again, it shows you that oftentimes it's not just about personnel. Last year we saw, everyone thought that Pittsburgh was going to light the world on fire with that power play. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, drawing a blank, former Ottawa Senator. Oh my God. Swedish defenseman. Anyways, you guys knew what I'm talking about. Everyone thought they were going to light the world on fire, but they didn't, right? They didn't. Carlson. So, that's kind of, it doesn't matter that you have one of the highest producing forward lines in the NHL on your team. The power play is a different animal. And if you don't have a good system and you don't, have that, chemistry and the ability to work together, sometimes it's just not going to work. Now, we'll hope that, once the season comes around and they can actually work. Right now, I'm sure that at training camp, the last thing they're working on is, dealing with, the power play. But, once they establish their team and they establish their power play lines, hopefully that'll come around and Hudson will help with that. Matheson did not look good tonight on the power play, but again, that's often the case. Veteran players don't always look as good in these preseason games as some of the younger players do. So those are my 3 thoughts of tonight's game.
Recliner Sports.